My body isn't a trash can, and my mind, it's not a battlefield. I don't want quick fixes for my health, and I don't want communication that feels like a war. I'm Tina, and this is Chats with AI, where I explore whether conversations with AI can make us healthier or better negotiators. Health, communication, ownership. No hype, no fluff, just clarity. Today, I want to talk about the cells, the cell receptors. How do they work? What do I need to know about it in a very easy to understand way? So let's dive straight in. Let's talk about the cells today. What are the cells in our body and why are they important?
Absolutely. Let's dive into it. So, cells are basically the fundamental building blocks of all living organisms. Think of them as tiny dynamic units that make up every part of your body, from your skin to your muscles to your organs. Each cell has its own job, whether it's carrying oxygen, fighting off infections, or helping you digest food. And they're important because they keep everything running smoothly. Without healthy cells, well, nothing in your body would function the way it should.
How many cells do I have in my body? And do they stay the same over my lifetime?
So, the human body is actually made up of a truly mind boggling number of cells. We're talking somewhere in the range of about 30 to 40 trillion cells on average, and they definitely don't stay the same over your lifetime. Your cells are constantly renewing themselves. Some cells, like those in your skin or your gut lining, turn over pretty quickly, while others, like certain brain cells, stick around for a lot longer. So, you're basically a living, evolving cellular mosaic throughout your life.
So not all the cells are the same.
Exactly. Not all cells are the same at all. Each type of cell has its own specialty. So your nerve cells are doing one job, your muscle cells are doing another, and your blood cells are doing yet another. It's kind of like a giant team where everyone has a different role, and together they keep you going.
If they are a giant team, do they talk to each other? Do they coordinate the work they do? And what is their job together?
Absolutely. They do talk to each other. Cells have all these fascinating ways of communicating, using chemical signals, hormones, and even direct connections to basically coordinate what they're all doing. So it's like this huge orchestra where each section is playing its own part, but they have to stay in sync to keep you healthy and functioning. And together, their big job is really to keep you alive, keep everything running smoothly, and basically let you do all the things you do every day.
What are the cell receptors? Explained in a very easy way to understand.
Sure. So, Agen cell receptors kind of like little locks on the surface of a cell. And the messages that come to them are like keys. When the right key, which could be a hormone or another type of signaling molecule, fits into the lock, it tells the cell what to do. So, these receptors are just a super simple way for cells to receive instructions and respond to what's going on around them.
So each cell has these receptors, these key locks, and are they all the same? And how many of them does a single cell have?
Exactly. Each cell does have these receptors, but they aren't all the same. Different types of cells have different sets of receptors depending on what messages they need to listen to. And in terms of how many, it's actually a lot. A single cell can have thousands of receptors on its surface. So it's like having a whole bunch of different locks ready to pick up different signals and make sure the cell knows what's going on.
What are the cells? What keys are they waiting for? What do they need to come into the lock, to come to the receptor?
Yeah, so these keys are basically different signaling molecules. That can be things like hormones, neurotransmitters, growth factors, basically any kind of chemical messenger that your body uses to tell cells what to do. So when the right molecule comes along and fits into the receptor, it's like the key sliding into the lock, and the cell gets the signal it needs. It's all part of how your body coordinates everything so smoothly.
So where are these molecules, these signals, these keys coming from?
Yeah, great question. So these signaling molecules, these keys, actually come from all sorts of places in your body. For example, hormones might be released by your endocrine glands, like your thyroid or your adrenal glands, and then travel through your bloodstream to reach other cells. Neurotransmitters are released by nerve cells to send signals to other nerves or muscles, and other signaling molecules might come from immune cells or even from the food you eat indirectly. So it's really just this big internal network where all the signals come from different sources to keep everything in balance.
Are my cells with their receptors in kind of a competition with each other for these molecules, for the keys?
Yeah, in a way, you could think of it like that. It's not really a competition in a cutthroat sense, but basically, multiple cells can have receptors for the same molecule. And depending on where the molecule is needed or how many receptors are around, some cells might pick up the signal more than others. So it's kind of like everyone's tuned in, and the molecule just goes where it's needed most.
Can I somehow influence that the molecule goes there where it's the most needed if there are more logs that could use this molecule?
Yeah, absolutely. In a lot of cases, you can influence that. For example, your body naturally does this by adjusting how many of those receptors are available on certain cells or by controlling how much of a signaling molecule is released. But from your side, you can influence it indirectly. So things like lifestyle, nutrition, or even medication can help regulate how those signals are distributed and make sure that they get to where they're most needed. So you do have a bit of influence over that.
So if I have all these cells in my body and these cells have all these receptors, the logs that they need to get the signals that they need, is it my goal that all of these logs have a key inside? Should they all be, so to say, taken?
That's a really insightful question. And the short answer is not necessarily. It's not really the goal that every single lock needs a key all the time. In fact, your body's all about balance. So some receptors might be waiting for signals only under certain conditions, and not all of them need to be activated at once. It's kind of like having a bunch of different tools that are used at different times. So the real aim is just that the right keys find the right locks when they're needed, rather than having them all engaged at the same time. It's all about harmony and balance rather than total saturation.
How do I know that the right key is in the right lock?
Yeah, so that's kind of the magic of how your body works behind the scenes. You generally know that the right key is in the right lock if your body's functioning well, you feel balanced, and everything seems to be running smoothly. In other words, if you're feeling good, that's usually a sign that the right signals are getting where they need to go. Of course, if something feels off, like you're feeling unwell or out of balance, then that can be a clue that maybe some of the signals aren't quite lining up. But for the most part, if you feel like you're in good shape, that's a great indicator that the keys and locks are doing just fine.
Does the cells, the locks, and the keys change over my lifetime? Do they change with aging?
Yeah, they definitely do change over time. So as you age, the cells, the receptors, and the signaling molecules all kind of evolve with you. Some cells might become less responsive over time. It might have fewer receptors in certain areas, or your body might produce fewer of those key molecules. And that's just a natural part of aging. It's one of the reasons why we might need to adjust our lifestyle or our nutrition to help support those changes. But it's all part of the process, and your body adapts as you go along.
Is there something that can disturb the receptors, that can disturb the locks, that they don't get the right key?
Absolutely. There are definitely things that can throw those receptors off. For example, chronic stress can kind of mess with how well your cells respond to signals, or inflammation in your body can affect how well those locks and keys match up. Even things like toxins or poor diet can influence how well those receptors work. So it's all about taking care of your overall health, reducing stress, and making sure that you're giving your body what it needs so that those signals can flow as smoothly as possible.
Is it possible that the wrong key is sitting in the lock?
Yeah, that can happen sometimes too. So sometimes you can have what we call kind of a wrong key scenario where maybe a molecule that's not supposed to fit into that lock actually does, and that can confuse the cell or give it the wrong instructions. There are even things like drugs or environmental chemicals that can mimic natural keys and sort of fit into the wrong places. So, yeah, that's another reason why it's good to be mindful of what you're exposed to and how you're taking care of yourself. It's all part of helping those keys and locks line up the way they should.
And how do I know that the wrong keys are in the locks?
Yeah, so usually you'll get a sense of it if something just feels off in your body. Maybe you're experiencing symptoms that are unusual, or you feel out of balance, or you're just not feeling like yourself. Those can be little clues that maybe some of those signals are getting mixed up. Of course, if you had persistent concerns, it's always good to check in with a healthcare professional. But generally, your own sense of well being is a really good guide. If you're feeling good, things are probably lined up. If you're not, it might be a sign to pay a bit more attention and see what might need adjusting.
In my understanding, these are all general things, and if I feel a bit off, I would think I didn't sleep enough, I had too much work to do, or maybe I had too much stress, or I didn't eat so good. I wouldn't think about my cells and the receptors and so on. So when should we think about the cells? What should give us this trigger to think that we need to somehow help ourselves?
Yeah, that's a really good perspective. So you're right. Most of the time we think about the big picture stuff like, did I get enough sleep? How's my stress level? And so on. And that's usually where you start. But when it comes to thinking about the cells and the receptors and all that deeper level, it's really when you're noticing that despite doing all the usual things, like you're sleeping okay, you're managing your stress okay, you're eating pretty well, but you still feel off. That's kind of the trigger that maybe there's something a little deeper going on, and maybe you need to support yourself on a cellular level. So it's really about tuning in. And if the usual tweaks aren't quite doing it, and you can think a little deeper about how to support the hells, and that can be the time to focus on it.
So let's say, imagine I sleep enough, I do my workouts, I do my best with food and eating, and I even take some supplements, but still I feel like a bit tired and I forget some things or whatever. Um, what do the cells have to do with menopause, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good example. If you're doing all the right things and you're still feeling those kinds of symptoms like tiredness or a bit of brain fog, and you're in a stage of life like menopause or approaching it, then your cells absolutely come into the picture because during menopause, your hormone levels are shifting. And that means the signals that your cells are used to are changing. So that can affect how those receptors work, and it can affect how your cells get the right keys. And that's why sometimes you might need a little extra support, or just be mindful that it's a natural transition. So, yeah, in those times, thinking about your cells and those changes can give you a little more insight into what's going on and how to navigate it.
When you say that sometimes my cells might need some extra support, what exactly do you mean with that? And don't say sleep better, eat better, exercise more. These general things, they are clear that we all should do it and that it's a package, that there is not the one thing to do and say, yeah, I've done it and I don't have to do anything else anymore. But what is this extra support for the cells?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear you on not just doing the standard advice again. So, when we talk about extra support for your cells, we're often talking about more targeted things like specific supplements that support cellular health. Things like CoQ10 or omega 3s or certain adaptogens that are known to help at a cellular level. It might also mean things like looking into hormone balance if you're dealing with menopause, or even exploring things like mitochondrial support, which is really at the cellular energy level. So, it's those more specific tweets that go beyond the general stuff and really target helping your cells function a little better and a more tailored play.
So basically, you're saying that there might be a point where my normal healthy lifestyle is not enough and I need to support myself with supplements.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's kind of like saying that, your healthy lifestyle is a fantastic foundation and it's super important. But there can be times, especially with changes like menopause or other life stages, where your cells might just need that little extra boost. So, yeah, that's when targeted supplements or specific cellular support can come in and help you keep feeling your best.
Let's go back to the receptors. Is the receptor the key lock and the key the only way to come into the cell, or can these molecules and let's say the um, vitamins and other nutrients that I'm taking and I'm eating and my body is having, are there other ways that they come into the cells?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just about the receptor and the key. That's one big way that signals get into the cell, but there are definitely other routes. For instance, a lot of nutrients like vitamins, minerals, and other molecules can actually enter your cells through different transport mechanisms. They might move through channels in the cell membrane or be carried across by transport proteins. So your cells have a bunch of different ways to get what they need. The receptor and key analogy is just one piece of the puzzle. There's a whole variety of ways that your cells take in nutrients and keep everything running.
So the receptor and key analogy is more giving the signals to the cell what needs to be done, and then there are different doors or different kinds of ways that the whatever the cell needs can come in. Is, you said, the cell membrane, is there something that influences how easy or hard can minerals and vitamins and so on get into the cell? What is important there?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the receptor and key analogy is really about signaling and telling the cell what to do. But when it comes to actually getting nutrients like vitamins and minerals into the cell membrane and those other pathways really matter. And what influences that is things like how healthy your cell membranes are, how good your overall cellular environment is. So things like staying hydrated, having healthy fats in your diet that support cell membranes, and just generally keeping inflammation low can all help those nutrients get in more easily. So it's all about making sure your cells have that nice, welcoming environment to let everything they need in.
How do healthy fats support cell membrane, and how does inflammation damage or harms it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, healthy fats, especially things like omega 3s, really help keep your cell membranes flexible and fluid. And that's super important because it lets nutrients and signals move in and out of the cell more easily. On the flip side, if you've got a lot of inflammation, that can actually make those cell membranes stiffer and less efficient. And that can make it harder for nutrients to get in and for waste to get out. So, keeping inflammation down helps keep those membranes nice and healthy and makes everything run more smoothly.
I assume this all the things we have discussed are the same important for children as for adults. So when is it the right time for children and young people to start looking into the cellular health?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, cellular health is important at every age. But for kids and young people, a lot of the basics of just having a healthy lifestyle really do cover a lot of what they need. So, good nutrition, balanced diet, plenty of play and movement, and all those things naturally support cellular health. But as they get older and as they go through different life stages, it can be a bit time to start introducing the idea that taking care of their cells is part of taking care of their overall health. But generally, the foundations that we set when they're young do a lot of that work. So, it's never too early, but the basics really do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Imagine you speak with my niece Mia, who is going to be 10 soon, and you want to explain her what a cell is, what a receptor is, why cell health is important, and how she can influence it, and also how she can feel into herself, to know how her cells are doing. So tell a little story for Mia so that she can imagine this.
Oh, absolutely. So if I were talking to Mia, I'd say something like this. Hey, Mia, so imagine your body's like a giant city. And inside the city, you have millions and millions of tiny little houses called cells. Each of these cells is doing a special job to keep the city, that's you, running really well. Now, on the outside of each little cell, there's a bunch of tiny locks. And these locks are waiting for the right keys, which are like special messages that tell the cell what to do. And when the right key fits into the lock, the cell knows exactly what to do to keep you feeling good. Now, to keep all those little houses happy, you want to make sure you're giving them what they need. That means eating yummy, colorful foods that have good stuff for your cells, and also staying active and playing so that anything stays strong. And if you ever feel like you're extra tired or a little off, it's kind of like your little city is telling you it might need a bit more or something. And that way you can learn to listen to your body and give it what it needs. So you're kind of like the mayor of your own little city of cells, and you get to help them all do their jobs really well.
So, what are the things we didn't discuss? What is the information that you can find in your knowledge that is important about the cells, cellular health, the receptors, the membrane? And I don't know about it. I didn't ask you about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me give you a couple more concrete things that we haven't touched on that might be helpful. For example, one thing we didn't really dive into is the role of things like cellular repair and autophagy. That's basically your cell's way of cleaning themselves up and recycling old parts to stay healthy. So sometimes people support that by doing things like intermittent fasting or certain dietary patterns that encourage their cells to kind of go into cleanup mode. Another thing we didn't really talk about is just the importance of good sleep for cellular repair, because a lot of that happens overnight. And we didn't really talk about the role of things like hydration in keeping your cells functioning well. So those are a few other angles that we didn't really dive into yet that can also be part of the picture if you want some more specifics.